Hi, everyone. Welcome to all of you. I'm Leandro from Powers to Fly. I work here in the marketing team. I'm calling and joining today from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm going to be moderating this talk. We're going to be talking about amazing things, amazing tips and knowledge and experience about how to create workplaces where working parents can thrive. So it's going to be a really interesting topic to talk. So you can drop in the chat box where you're calling from, and we'll get started in just a minute. If this is your first time joining a Chat and Learn, we host Chat and Learns every week. So please make sure to subscribe to all of them. And if this is your first time here at hearing from us here at Powers to Fly, we are very committed and engaged on creating more diverse workforce and connecting underrepresented talent with high visible roles. So this is just for you to know. There we go. I'm going to be just reminding you all that the rules for today, it's going to be, this call is going to be recorded, so make sure you turn your camera on, and we believe in visibility and see your faces and talk and interacting. So if you turn your camera on, you are going to be appearing on the recording. So, and if you are watching this, it's going to be share with all of our communities. So thanks for rewatch it. You're going to be getting this talk and all the hints that we're going to be talking after this event. So please make sure also to connect with us to ask our speaker today your questions in the chat box. We're here to hear from you, to know about your questions and to answer all of them. So the chat will remain open. And please make sure to follow Power to Fly in all of our social media channels, LinkedIn, our platform, Instagram, everywhere, just to so you can make sure to keep posted of all of the Chat and Learns and summits and all the events that we provide to our community. Moving forward, I'm going to introduce our speaker. Hi, Kimberly, how are you? It would be great if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about your storytelling, your experience, how you get to know Power to Fly. I know this is your second chat with us, but just for people to know a little bit more about you right before we dive into the questions.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm excited to talk about supporting families in the workplace and how to create workplace cultures that support and lift up families and retaining them in the workplace. So just a little bit about me. I am the founder and CEO of Learning Motherhood. We are a consulting agency with a goal to humanize the workplace. And we do this through our online community platform, which was built to create a culture around the importance of this idea of humanizing the workplace by supporting organizations and providing resources and education to support them, and also the direct needs of individual working parents. And that is kind of the uniqueness of what we do. We kind of support you as a company and do that bridge between HR and the individual so that they, as employees, get that individual support that they need to thrive through this transition back into the workplace, or currently as they are continuing their journey as a parent. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I love that you're talking about humanizing. When we talk about co-parenting, benefits, working, it's really triggering. And today, I mean, it's really interesting to learn about all of your experience. So can you tell us a little bit more about what we're going to be learning from these takeaways today about creating strategies and the resources that you're going to be sharing with us? Just before I ask you our first question, the pre-submitted question.
Yeah, so we're just going to talk about how to support you in building these benefits and providing a culture that allows parents to thrive and also retain them in the workplace. And I think that sometimes this discussion is really hard to navigate on a company level, on a team level, and on an individual level. And so, what I want to do today is really give you some tools and suggestions and resources that will allow you to begin that journey, or if you're in the middle of it, kind of give you some support to move forward and keep moving in the right direction. We all know this is so crucial right now, as we've seen in the past 2 years with the pandemic, and the importance of really creating these supportive cultures within our workplaces is huge in kind of looking at the future of work.
Absolutely. And it's connected actually to the future of work, what it's demanding from the upcoming generation. So it's really interesting. So thanks everyone for joining. We have people from Virginia, Wisconsin, San Luis Obispo in California, Milwaukee, Buenos Aires. So we are all here to learn. So I'm going to ask you our first pre-submitted questions just to kicks us off. So how can support caregivers to ensure their parenthood is not an obstacle to their development, career growth, or sense of belonging to the team? How can we support caregivers from our companies?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'd like to say that if we look at things as, caregiving as an obstacle, we're looking at it from the wrong lens. We really need to look at it as a benefit and celebrate what tools parents are coming to the table with within organizations. So yeah, there's stresses. There's a lot of new things competing with our time, but we're also learning these incredible skills. So if we're celebrating it, then we're one step closer to really supporting your employees. Now, just to break this down a little bit further is, ask the associate about themselves, celebrate like what they're experiencing, in a way that allows them to feel comfortable sharing and integrating from family and work. And that's a huge piece. And then in addition, I know we were talking about career growth. I think there's an assumption, and it's not on purpose. I don't think there's like this active thought like, oh, career growth now doesn't exist for a parent. I think, or that it's on hold for the next several years. We don't want to make an assumption. What we should do is really ask the associate what they're looking for in their career development. Don't assume that, I think we come from good intentions, right? We come from this place like, oh, I'm going to give you the opportunity to work part-time, or I'm going to give you the opportunity to scale back, or, we won't put you up for that promotion because we know you're going through a lot. And a lot of times doesn't have ill will towards it. It's actually, you're coming from a place of trying to be supportive. But what that message sends to the employee is, wait, like, you don't want me to grow here. So it's really important to put those biases aside and really ask the question, like, what do they want from their career now? And you can do that when you do your check-ins. So, a lot of organizations, and I recommend doing like a monthly check-in, depending on where they are in their career, or in their parenting journey, let me say. So if they're early on returning back to work after parental leave, you should do those check-ins more frequently, once a week, and then slowly like engage in every other week, and then once a month. And in those check-ins, see how they're doing, see how they're feeling about their career, see what their experience has been, and make sure that dialogue is open. In addition to that, another place you can put this in is when you're doing their IDP, and having that discussion in those individual developmental plans to really understand, like, here's here's an opportunity for them to tell you what they want versus the other way. We want to have open-ended questions, not closed-ended questions. And then lastly, I think this idea we were talking about, a sense of belonging to the team, it is so crucial right now, as I'm sure most of you know, that when you're working independently at home more and less in an office, feeling like a team takes more effort. And so one of the things I advise is peer-to-peer mentors and mentors to parents from different departments, different levels within the organization. And this is a way to show culturally that you're here to support them and celebrate their accomplishments at work and at home, because you're investing and giving them opportunities to learn within the side of the organization and support their own employees.
Absolutely. Like you're saying, investing in people. And I think that belonging has to do with what you are sharing about having the opportunity to choose and not assume and ask, and creating the space to listen and create the conversation to each experience that we have in our team. So thanks for pointing that out. Let's go to another question that has to do with initiatives, just to keep on this topic. What initiatives can companies put in place to help parents achieve their desired work-life integration? What are the most responsible actions to take today?
Yeah, I think there's so many different components to this, right? Because when I look at this and when I get this question from organizations, it's really having this idea of looking at the whole team, the whole department, the whole company, and really seeing what initiatives can support everyone, no matter who they are and how they're coming to work and showing up. For parents specifically, these needs are met through flexibility in schedules, flex days, PTO days versus sick and vacation days. So instead of outlining, okay, you have 10 sick days and then you have 2 weeks of vacation, let's just wrap that all into one list of PTO days. Because ultimately what happens for a parent specifically, or anyone that has caregiving responsibilities, is that sick days, they're calling and having to say, I'm not sick, but my child is, or my parent is, or I need to take someone to the doctors. And it's more information than we need, right? Like we need to just be able to say, I need to take this day off because of whatever reason that is allowed within your organization that is makes sense to share. But ultimately, we need to be kind of universally looking at that information, because what has happened during the pandemic specifically is we've had to use up all our sick days. And then we're asking for, can we use our vacation days? So, that's one very simple way of changing how that looks. Or if you can't change that on a company level, maybe you can advocate that at a department level or a team level with your HR manager and staff. Another way to do this is to set clear boundaries as it relates to when emails are sent and when they are answered. That could be no emails on vacations. They are not going to send an email on vacation. That could be no emails are sent at a certain time of the day. So we turn off our emails at this certain time of the day. That doesn't mean if someone wants to work, they can't. We have all these great triggers on our emails to be able to send emails the next day and put them as an option to send the next day. It gives allowance, but it sets a cultural aspect within your organization, your team, or individuals that, they can take that break from work. And it is okay to put boundaries on. Expectation on how fast emails should be sent. I know this was a big thing for our team. And it was something we established early on when I was in leadership at my previous company, is really putting an expectation. So it wasn't something where it was like, I haven't heard from you. Where's that email at? You kind of set these expectations up in advance so that you're not adding more emails to the scenario. And no meeting days. This is like a new thing that I absolutely love, and something that I had always advised my team to do, which was days where we didn't have meetings. And those were times where it was considered office hours, and it was really scheduled to kind of work out your weekday. And I think those are really crucial on a time frame perspective. And then family friendly programming. This includes new parent programming, ongoing support, and parental leave for both parents, and health programming for all. So again, we're looking at everyone as within the organization that is touched in some way.
It's interesting that everything that you're sharing, we can make it, as you said, universal inside of the company to reach everyone and be equal with it. And all of these actions actually impact on our employer branding, right? Why should I choose or pick this company to work? Like, what are the benefits? Where I'm going to be encountered when I go to work? Do I have to struggle if I'm parenting? So I think it's really interesting that all of these practices actually has to do with employer branding and belonging and feeling that you can be there, you can ask, that the company is hearing you. So I think it's really interesting that all of these hints that you share, we can apply them right away. It'll take conversations, we can prioritize, but all of these actions, we can start crafting these ideas right away inside of our team. So I think it's really interesting. And I just wanted to ask, all of these ideas and things that you bring, did all of this come from your own experience while creating all of these practices and setting up all of your services? Just to know, because it's really interesting from your own perspective.
Yeah, so I worked for a very large Fortune 100 company that was international. And I really had the opportunity to watch an exceptional amount of growth happen super fast. It was a very exciting environment. In that scenario, I was growing with the organization and was in leadership roles early on. So I got the experience of working with small teams, large teams, hiring people, working with HR to navigate all the different types of families that come together, working with senior leadership as we built out brand new teams that never existed before with different models. So it was quite an amazing place to kind of learn a lot of different ways to do things and different ways not to do things, and really take the best of both worlds to build out learning motherhood. It's also, I think it's really interesting when you look at a large organization and then a small organization and see the impact can be similar. It's just this idea of humanizing it. And I remember when I was pregnant with our first child and I was in a leadership role, and going back to kind of what we're talking about with these work-life integration piece, I remember working late. Like, that's just what I did to show how I was so committed to the organization. And a senior leader pulling me to the side, and saying, Kim, I see that you're sending emails at, 9, 10 o'clock at night. You don't want to do that. And I was like, I'm committed. I'm showing my commitment. It's like, but what you're showing is lack of efficiency. And you need to show efficiency as you grow in your leadership. That's what we want to see. We don't want people to have to work that late. We don't want people to have to feel like in order to excel and grow their career, they have to put in those hours. There's got to be a balance outside of your career that you can also integrate your family and have your life outside of this. And it was,
Yeah.
it was funny. It was like, we always said, we're not curing cancer here, which in my role, I was not, which is a big, big, difference here. But like, we can have that opportunity to really look at what's efficient to ensure that we're doing the right things for our people.
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking my question, because I was hearing you and just wanted to ask. So if you have, if the audience have any questions, please drop it in the chat box. We'll go there in a moment. Let's jump into another question, the next one.
Sure.
How can we support parents who need the flexibility to work remote, while also balancing their organization's need of in-person interaction with customers? Because perhaps we always talk about hybrid remote, but what happens when parents have to go and have this interaction in person?
Yeah, it's really hard, right? I think during this time, it's been so challenging for workplaces to figure out the right formula and get everyone on board to try it and work on it and believe in it. There's a couple things here. I would add that, if you're considering this right now, so you haven't even put in something yet, I would put out some sort of survey to the organization or the department that is considering this, and really look at like the options. So reasonable options, right? That you can actually commit to, and get feedback. One of the biggest things, and it's such a huge piece of leadership, and with any organization, really getting your people involved, they feel a part of the solution. And so you're kind of giving them the opportunity to really make an impact and actually get their buy-in, because they feel a part of the solution. And while we can't meet everyone's needs, we certainly can hear everyone's needs through the survey. So when you're thinking of this, there are different hybrid models, right? I think what works best is for the company to focus on what is department outlined and also individual outlined. So, maybe this is something that not every department has to come in at the same time. So that's another piece to consider. I know a lot of organizations are doing this on a department basis. And then flexibility in these hybrid models. So maybe this is a question that you ask on the survey, could mean a defined 5-hour period, leaving time for employees to drop off their kids at school and pick them up, and allow for additional time to work at home during those hours that they had become accustomed to. Because you as a company have clearly seen that, and it's actually very much looked at during the pandemic, how many more hours people are working at home. If they were in the office versus the amount of hours, it's about 3 hours more a day where people are working at home, because there's no separation from work and life. So I think we can feel confident that whether they're in an office or not, that work is getting done. So this goes back to, we need that interaction that you're talking about, which is important. And so you set an option for on the survey, or if it's something you don't want to do on a survey, is doing a 5-hour block of time where there is a certain amount of days that they have to be in. And then another option is actually doing meeting days. So there's a couple days during the week where meetings are designated, and that's when departments are all in there together. And then you're all actually meeting with other departments based on project needs or communication needs. I know that this was something that we did in my office pre-pandemic. I worked with a sales team, so I had different levels of sales teams, and I had them, whether they were local to me or in different states or in different counties. And we just had specific meeting days or times where we were meeting up. And so that was a way, it was predictable, and it was a great way to navigate it.
Absolutely. And I think that the important thing that I'm hearing is that if the person has a request, you are actually creating space for them actually to share some kind of solution and ideas, and to be there just, okay, this is happening to me. You are creating this survey. I can tell you what I think, what I need. So I think it's really interesting to always create space, just not to do things, but to get people involved. So all of those hints were really interesting. And there is another question that reads, can you share hints about parental coverage benefits? When we talk about benefit, the package can be huge, but what are the main benefits that you can share with us today?
Yeah, so I'm just going to list a bunch of them
Absolutely.
to make it super easy for everyone. New parent programming is near and dear to my heart. Obviously, at Learning Motherhood, it's a huge piece of what we do on a transitional period. It includes retaining your new parents after parental leave. So parental leave is a huge piece of it, right? Like giving paid parental leave in your benefits is huge for both the primary parent and also any way a family comes together. It's really important to include that. So male or female is a huge piece to that. But new parenting programming is such a really important additional piece. And that is because that transition is so challenging. You can have all the parental leave and then still have an employee that's struggling through that time period. And what I mean by that is that could include the emotional roller coaster, the physical navigation of things. This is all so much, the road mapping to transitioning back to the identity of being a working parent, and just questioning everything. And so that's where parental coaching comes into play. So we offer, and it is a huge piece, is that new parent parental work coaching to help that transition and work out a map of a plan that will work for at home and at work. And then in addition to that, we look at transitional flex scheduling. It's a huge win, and that doesn't even necessarily cost anything, right? So that is literally over a certain amount of time, giving that transition where you come into work a certain amount of days, and then you work your way up to that full schedule again. Some companies are already doing this, and I'm so excited to see that they are taking on these amazing new ways to support parents without parents having to ask for it and feeling uncomfortable with asking for it. Let's see, re-entering the workforce programming. So for parents in general that have left the workforce and re-enter the workforce, that's a huge win too. Giving that option to help them through that transition, major win. And you're finding someone that's excited to return to the workforce. So help them through that transition. They're just as valuable, whether they were gone for 2 years or they were there the whole time. So ongoing support with monthly talks related to parenting and career for all levels of the organization. On a leadership level, I mean, there's leaders, there's managers who are struggling because they're trying to be that emotional support for their team, but they're also trying to navigate all the other things that are going on for them and their career and at home. So all levels of the organization, paid or partial backup childcare. The one thing I'll say about this is make sure that the information for paid and backup childcare is really clear on why you decided to use this specific organization. Childcare is so personal, and you need the buy-in of your employees to actually use it, not just say it's a benefit. And then lactation support in the office or for travel.
With all of this, we can already create the whole programming. Here, there's a question in the chat box that reads, what is an example of new parenting programming? Is this whole package is something that you can just pick and, and choose what to do and create and custom create your own for your company? How do you describe like this programming of new parenting?
Yeah, so I think that it is individual coaching for your parents to navigate that transition back to work. So that is usually an hour session, maybe four coaching sessions to help them through that transition to make sure that home and work are set up for success. That includes some of the very major things that are going on in an emotional standpoint and physical standpoint, logistical standpoint, in order to have a present employee when you return back to work. Additionally, that includes like having expert support, like lactation consultants and nutritionists to navigate all the things that are on someone's mind, sleep experts that are on their mind when they're trying to be present at work and feeling exhausted or depleted in many different ways. These are all things we offer at Learning Motherhood. So I'll share a little bit more of that at the end, but this is a huge piece and I'm so glad someone asked about that.
Yes, and actually all of this is really interesting because perhaps, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we would leave all these things outside of work. But if I'm now in parenting, I'm going to become a father, or and I'm having all of these services and the company is hearing me and it's providing me all of this knowledge. I think it's really, that's when you create that sense of belonging, that you are being seen and heard inside of your company. So thanks for that. There is another question here on the chat before we go to the pre-submitted that says, how can we apply these things to service industries? When we talk about different kind of, like corporate, but we have people that perhaps are working at stores, service, like how can we adapt these to different industries?
I think the best way to include this is, I know, for instance, the organization I worked for had retail stores. So if that is a piece to it, I hear you, I see you. There are things that you can do related to parental leave and paid leave specifically for both male and female, all genders. And then in addition to that, you can also provide that parenting coaching to support through that transition too. I think oftentimes, especially when you're talking about, let's say, store associates, they just want to feel like they are part of a family community. And how do you create that? But by providing acknowledgement and celebrating it. So I'll give you one example. Like a lot of times the way we celebrate new parents is we come in and say, congratulations on your new family member. We're so excited for you. And here's what's been going on at work. What we forget to do is actually ask questions about how they're doing, how they're feeling about being back at work. What do they need from us as a manager, as a company? What can I do to support you during this transition? So some of this is really communication relevant. And so if you don't have necessarily an enormous amount of budget to like throw some of these larger programs at you, you can kind of look at a communication program to support those service associates and kind of work with your managers in those customer facing roles to make sure that they make it a priority to have these conversations, have these check-ins, and kind of go from there.
Amazing. Thanks for your answer on that. Another pre-submitted question that is really interesting, and we're talking about diversity, right? So what are the best tips to keep in mind diverse families when creating parental benefits or policies? I think this is really interesting because there was another question in the chat box that was asking about becoming a father. Is there a leave period for fathers? Because when we talk about co-parenting and parenting, we're always perhaps on our bias thinking about the mother, but not the needs of the father, or what happens when we have, two fathers, family is a whole concept that it's not just, perhaps we are, I don't know, it's really interesting, but just to not go further, give us your answer to that.
Yeah, so families come together in very different ways, and we've got to acknowledge that. We've got to also celebrate that. But on a level of trying to put together programming around it, and just to answer first the father side of it before I go into the diversity piece to this, I cannot stress how crucial it is to have an option for fathers to take parental leave. It helps the entire company in the sense that what we're trying to do is provide equality for everyone in the organization and ensure that there's no stigma if you take parental leave. So what has happened in the past is dads are rushing back to get back to work. And parents and moms are staying home for longer periods of time. I'm just giving you like a scenario here. And when you look at that, the mom re-enters into the workforce and re-enters after parental leave, and they are navigating so much bias, whether it's there or not, it's subconsciously there. And if we can strip that away and show that fathers can take their parental leave too, then you're going to see leadership start to even up between the genders. And that is such a huge win, right? We want to see more women in leadership. We want to see that, but we have to have our male counterparts have the opportunity to take leave, and really let's celebrate that. Let's say, so there was most recently there was a very high profile male that was celebrated for taking 2 weeks of leave. And it was like, wait, but the parental leave policy is 2 months of leave for males. So why is he, like, what message is he sending for parental leave if the leadership is only taking 2 weeks? And listen, I know this is hard, but the impact is so huge when that is evened up. So that's my first thing. So when you're creating parental leave policies, make sure that it covers all genders and demonstrates everything to support having both caregivers, or like you said, like LGBTQ plus communities. It's a range of how families come together. Make sure that we are allowing the opportunity for everyone to get access to leave.
I think that everything's come back to humanize and just
Yeah.
not think, like one way, but just to think on the fathers and everything. So I think it's really interesting to that.
Yeah, and I'll add that, there can be subcategories in that. So how like we were talking about our new parenting program. So 42% of parents or mothers that had children from 0 to 2 left the workplace in 2020. And that is part of the issue, right? We need to allow everyone to be a part of the caregiving experience. In order to do that, we have to have, an overarching theme that shares the same kind of goal of caregiving. And then you can have these sort of like different areas to support this, right? Like you can have the new parenting program to retain your women in the workplace. You can have the parental leave and dad programming to help them. I just want to add on this. There's been some really great new things that have come out recently to support this, such as time for miscarriage and giving opportunity for people to have time for that. Parental leave for those that adopt and giving time for that. Benefits for infertility and giving opportunity to navigate that. So there are, like you said, families come together in so many different ways, and we can't ignore that. We really, really need to make an investment in making sure we support everyone in different ways.
Yeah, and having all these options for people to thrive at work, actually, while parenting. So I think you were saying something that I was just writing that to me it's like create an experience around, caregiving actually. So how can we create a healthy, better experience from inside of our companies to keep our talents in, and feeling that they belong. So I think that's really interesting. There is a question here on the chat box that is really interesting too. We'll try to get to answer all of them, but it reads, are you aware of any data on paid elder care leave? I think
On
that's really,
what, on elderly
yeah,
elderly
elder care.
So there are some, so that's, there are some really great organizations that do support caregiving for elderly care too. I think that goes back to how you create the benefits. So you could definitely include a piece there on all caregiving, and then just like everything that is being, that I shared, whether that is a miscarriage or adoption, there's this underarching theme here of caregiving, and then underneath that you're kind of outlining what the options are. So on a beta test, there are companies out there that are providing caregiving services for the elderly, meaning you can hire to support that piece as well.
Awesome. Let's go to another pre-submitted that says, what things can company ERGs can do to support working parents while waiting for companies to make changes around parental policies? While we are waiting for all of these benefits and programming to be there, what can ERGs do to support?
First of all, I have to say, any parenting ERG or any of the ERGs that are often employees are donating their time to this amazing work. It's a lot. So it's an extra added thing on top of your already job responsibilities. So I just want to acknowledge that. It's often not paid. So you're really just adding value to your organization by doing this. It's a huge thing to take on. So first of all, anyone that out there doing that, I see you. And what are some things you can do? You can host expert talks. So bring in specialists. I see someone saying, what's an ERG? It's Employee Resource Group. And put together some new parent group within your organization, in your ERG. So that can be such as a mentor offering where maybe you have a new parent with a more established parent to help really connect those two, and that new parent to feel supported through that transition. So these are no additional cost. It's just in terms of financial, but it is a cost of your time. So I don't think you can do anything without there being some cost, right? Someone's going to have to add time to their day to make this happen. But it's a huge, huge piece. And I think by doing those things, you're validating how important it is that the company bring in support. So that can be related to the feedback you get from the hosting these events or the mentor program, and saying, this is why we really need the investment, because, honestly, it's a lot of additional work, and you deserve to be recognized for that.
Absolutely. There is a question in the chat box that is related to one of the pre-submitted. So we can merge those.
Okay.
It says, as employees, how can we introduce childcare as an employee benefit when we talk about childcare?
This is an amazing opportunity to show the growth of your organization and support you are providing to retain your working parents. It definitely sends a message that you care about caregiving responsibilities. And caregiving can be that, as we talked about before, that can be for all ages, right? So everyone in that group, it might just be two different separate companies that support that. But it's such a huge win. What is needed is, if you're bringing on a backup childcare or caregiving stipend, for instance, is another thing that organizations can do, is making sure that it's communicated well and often. I can't tell you how many clients we've had, individual clients who said, I found out about a resource and an opportunity that was from some sidebar conversation and I had no idea it existed. So this is where managers really do play a huge part in making sure information is shared frequently, and also give them the opportunity to have the chance to connect with that organization so that they can feel comfortable, and advise them to do it in advance before you need the backup childcare, or while you're, thinking about childcare. When a parent expresses, or a potential parent, so someone that is going through the parenting journey but isn't currently have a child, sharing this information, I think those are great times to introduce this, because again, you're showing that you're committed to a family-friendly work environment where they can grow their career.
Absolutely. Thanks for that answer. There was a question that reads, how often do you hear about male caregivers struggling with childcare work-life balance issues? We were talking about fathers, but from your experience, how often do you hear males talking about it, like expressing themselves?
Yeah, I read this.
Because it's hard, to hear and to express this.
Yeah, so I read this question, and it's very interesting, and I'm glad someone asked it, because you might not necessarily hear it as often in the workplace, but at home you hear it all the time. So you hear it in your community, in your friendships, in those scenarios, you hear it all the time. And unfortunately, there are, in many, and I'm not saying all, but in many, there is a stigma when opening up that way. And unfortunately, that's why it's so important to include parental leave for both male and female fathers specifically, to make sure that it is really celebrated, to take that time off. It needs to be included more. It needs to be a part of the discussion, because honestly, when you're in a 2-income family, or you're in a partnership family, you need the support of both members of the family to really ensure that caregiving is a dual effort, and we have to take the stigma out of that. That is a huge piece why we actually introduced the fair play method into our programming at Learning Motherhood, which really helps with that caregiving piece, being a part of both parents' responsibilities, or if you're a solo parent, really finding that community or chosen family to support you through being a parent and navigating all the responsibilities. It's a lot.
Absolutely. And adding to what you were saying, just to create a space to talk about it, it's a first step to moving forward with it. So before thinking in the whole change, just to start talking about it, because these things are things that we neglect on the daily, just to talk and to check with our peers and team members. So I think it's really interesting, your point of view on that. There is another question that has to do with tips. What are 3 tips to empower a better working culture in terms of work-life integration in more traditional workplace?
Communicate your family-friendly programming often and throughout the organization. Set boundaries with when meetings are and when emails are sent. Give flexibility for in-office hours.
Great.
And things that are like tangible, that you can just, simplistic pieces.
Awesome, thanks. How should managers or recruiters approach parental family related questions during an interview or meeting? This is an interesting question too, because with all of the unconscious bias, sometimes we ask things that we do not should be asking, or we are assuming. So when we talk about interviews, recruiting, being in the process to start working, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we should not be asking about their family in an interview or recruiting. That should never be a part of the discussion. If they share, that's their decision. But really, what you want to flip it to is what your family friendly policies are and how you support families at your company. But yeah, we should not be asking about their families.
Amazing to know, like, with who do you live? All of these questions that are really
Yeah,
perhaps intriguing to know, but not necessarily needed in the interview.
I think also it's just, it's that warming up chatter that you're starting with, right? Like to get people comfortable. And so a lot of times it's not coming from a bad place. It's just having those conversations, trying to get out some of that nervousness when you're doing interviews. So you're coming from a good place, but we really got to stay away from that. It does not set a good precedent.
Absolutely. I tend to say, at least I'm going to translate it in Spanish, but it's like we can have like the best intentions, but if we do not have like the knowledge or the tools, we can commit all these errors just to,
Yeah.
it's not just good intentions. So talking about reframing, updating what we know so far about co-parenting and benefits, have you seen any changes during the last years? Have you seen evolution in companies taking action to start designing caregiving benefits and policies?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say I've seen companies become way more open about creating and revising their parental leave policies, which is such a step in the right direction as our country is really behind on that on a national level. So having companies step up and do that and not rely on federal or state is amazing. And we need so much more of that. We need to really look at how we can provide that within organizations right now, since we are lacking that on a national level. So I've seen so many companies do a better job of that. I've seen more visibility than before about being a parent, which is great. I think the pandemic really kind of put a magnifying glass on that, how we had to show our families, show how we're navigating our work days and really provide support. So there's so many reasons why that's been crucial. We have to realize that above and beyond the days of caring for another person, they are coming back to work with a whole new set of values and expectations. So we have to do exactly that. We have to make it present. There's so many pieces that are huge to that. So I'm glad to see those things. I'm also seeing that we are really starting to invest in more robust programming. And, my hope is that not just very, very large organizations are going to do that, but those middle sort of like in between small and large are going to make those investments as well. I love seeing all the names that we recognize, but let's see the names that we don't recognize as organizations with these benefits. And then they'll get the recognition because they're going to get more and more amazing talent flooding their way. Because ultimately, another piece that I'm seeing is so many potential new employees that are going through the interviewing process are actually asking about these benefits because they want to find a home that's not going to be just a stepping point, but it's going to be a place where they can stay.
Yeah, and everything that you're saying, it resumes to create better workplaces, safe environments where we can be, where we can be loved, where we can thrive, when we don't feel that we are losing our careers if we are taking some parental leave. So I think it's really interesting that if you that are on the other side have any question, please drop it in the chat box. We have 5 more minutes. So Kim, if you would like to share with us your slide and tell us a little bit more about your company, and that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just bringing it up here for everyone. And I'm just, kind of going back to that theme of asking what you can do to help your new parents. Let me just show you this screen here.
Yes.
Okay, so these are just some of our services that we offer. I would like to add that during this time period when you're planning for a family and having a family, a lot of questions come about your career. Is this the right place for you? And if you're ahead of the game and you're offering these services, you're definitely going to help retain your employees. We are blessed to have over a 95 percentile rate of employees returning back to work after going through our programming. So we have our return to work series, and it's basically a roadmap it's a customized program for both parents, offering teaching either in person at your office or via video training to support this transition back to work. It also includes all the additional support of the experts that I talked about, the lactation consultant, all those pieces, sleep expert. And in addition to that, we provide a community for that. So feel a part of a community. We do management training. A lot of the things that we were talking to are about communication, how to really help kind of navigate the nuances of a team and the makeups of a team to help kind of support your working parents, but support all your parents wherever they are in their transition. And then also for those that aren't parents. We have the coaching piece, which is the individual one-on-one coaching. We do speaking engagements to support talks within your organization, and consulting services with HR and people teams for advisory and support on project-based, kind of building out your parental leave programming, or kind of giving you some suggestions and communication tools in order to get information out to your communities in order to take advantage of the services that you have. So in terms of information where you can find me, you can find me
Absolutely.
at learningmotherhood.co. You can email me directly. I'd love to hear from you. Even if you're not ready for a service, I'd love to hear like what was beneficial for you, anything that you had more questions about. I'm happy to answer them. This comes from a deep passion of wanting to retain working parents. So I'm here for all of you in whatever it is. And honestly, like, I just want to see your organization, your employees thrive.
Amazing. And we can find you on LinkedIn too, right? Just to connect and talk with you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you have my LinkedIn information, but that will be shared. But yeah, you just go Kimberly Didrikson and you'll pull me up there. We also have a company page, Learning Motherhood, as well.
Great. We're going to be sharing with all of you these resources and the links and everything. So thanks for being here. Thanks, Kim, for sharing all of your knowledge and experience and the tips. I think it's a really deep topic to talk, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have more time in the future to talk about it. So I just wanted to thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. We're going to be sending you the recording, the resources, and everything. So I hope you have an amazing afternoon, night, morning, wherever you are. So thanks for joining to this chat and learn today. And we'll see you soon on the next one.
Thanks,
Bye bye.
everyone. Thanks,
Thank you.
Leonardo.
Bye bye.